Let's wait for everybody to come in.
0 viewers.
Nothing yet. Where is the chat? There's supposed to be a chat somewhere. Oh, there it is. We're supposed to see that on the main link. All right, I see 3 viewers. All right, if you're on, can you just type in the chat and let us know if you can hear okay, if the video is okay before we get started? Just hit the chat and let us know. Hey, I see Nadeem, I see Lemuel. Seems okay, Shaq saying it's all right. Okay.
A bit of a delay.
Yeah, let me shut the video off. You can see the chat over there. I know why the chat doesn't show up here on the side. It's weird. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay, but we don't have to worry about that. All right, let's just wait a minute for a few more people to join, and then we'll get the show started. Is this link posted in Telegram? You can post a link to the video on the Telegram group.
Yeah, it's supposed to do it.
It's already there. Yeah, just bump it up so people can see it. Did you announce that we're on?
It's pinned. It's under pinned.
Yeah, just type in there so people know. Anyway, this will be recorded, so you guys can come back to it at a later time if you'd like to check it out. We'll also just send an email out to everybody, so yeah, people will be able to check it out at a later time. So let's get started. There's really 2 parts to this. One part is we're going to talk and give you a quick update on Q1, so the first 3 months of the year, and give you an update about how things have been going from our side. It was a really busy first quarter this year, and the second half of this is just answering your questions. So there's been a bunch of questions on Reddit. I know there's some that we're seeding through Telegram as well. So if you have any questions for us, we'll answer them live, right here in the second half of this stream. So post your questions on Telegram, Reddit, and we'll get to them. We'll get to as many as we can, in the second half of this call. So with that, let's get started. Q1 was crazy. So we had a ton of things going on at the same time, and there's a lot of interest in getting a big part of that logistics, are super important for our customers. Because at the end of the day, like a lot of the stuff that we're working on, really just driven by customers, right? And so we spent a lot of time, doing customer development efforts and about what the outcome of development. And so just to explain that, I'll go through the master plan real quick. It's 3 parts primarily, and the core focus, the core drive behind this master plan is, all right, when we were talking to a lot of the people, the primary concern was like, okay, there's a market, right? A total addressable market. These are people with money that are willing to spend that money to buy things. And I think the total commerce market is somewhere around like $20 trillion. And so a small portion of that market is people that have access to cryptocurrencies. And this is really tiny. And then the problem is like a small portion of this already very, very small market is, comprised of people that are actually willing to buy and sell things using cryptocurrencies. The vast majority of people holding cryptocurrencies are really just hodling, right? They expect the price of the coins that they're holding, ETC, ETH, whatever, to go up, and that's why they're holding these currencies. And so when you consider that, okay, the core idea behind Verify originally was to provide a reputation protocol for blockchain commerce, but blockchain commerce is so exceedingly tiny that we would have to wait until the point where the blockchain commerce market grew, substantial, to become so substantial that it would make sense to have a reputation protocol on top. And so, based on discussions that we had with people, the vast majority don't really care much about blockchain, these fancy terms. All they care about is how that's going to help them sell more or make more per transaction. Yeah, how it's going to impact their business. And so 3 parts. The first part was Verify payments. And so we decided that we needed to create a method, a mechanism for transferring value from any person to any other person. And to do this in a way that was quick, low cost, and also purely unidirectional, the same way crypto is. And the second piece of that was, once we have a basis that enables transactions, so enables the transfer of value, we can build on top of that the logic to support pure transactions. So transactions like buying and selling. And so in a transaction, you have a buyer, you have a seller, you have some sort of product or service that is being bought or sold. And so we can leverage the strengths of the Verify reputation protocol at this stage. Once we've already established this base network that supports transactions, we'd be able to implement the reputation protocol, protection for all these transactions. And at that point, we'd be leveraging cred fees. So we would take a portion of each transaction, convert that to cred and pull cred off the market. And so the real goal behind this whole mechanism is, again, to protect transactions and provide sort of like an insurance policy for transactions, a conceptual insurance policy. And then the last part of this is, we open it up to developers. And so it's great that we're able to create this network where we're able to protect transactions and open up the world of commerce to protected transactions, enable more people to buy and sell using crypto. The real, amazing when you open this up to a much larger market. You allow developers to make their own apps using the reputation protocol that we provide and create all sorts of crazy use cases. Things like loans, for instance, micropayments. There's so many potential applications where you leverage things like reputation in order to just grow the blockchain commerce the blockchain market as a whole. And so those are the high level 3 steps to the Verify master plan. It is going to take a while to go through the whole plan, but yeah, we're super excited about the possibilities now for the next 18 months on Verify payments and creating a solution that provides values to customers today and increases potential adoption of our reputation protocol down the line. And so that's the master plan. I recommend that you go through the actual master plan, which we'll link to in the description below. But yeah, let's go to the other side of this, which is the alpha. So that was a super exciting part of the first quarter. Let's tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was an exciting. Looking back in time, it was actually the whole process and talk to customers. So the way we reached the alpha, as Yazan explained in the master plan, it was very heavy customer development. So we really needed to talk to possible prospects first to really understand. Look, customers and tell them payment solution, and they would go like, well, most of my clients really don't use crypto.
Yeah.
So you'll end up like, well, there is a high possibility if you have the system in place, they might end up using it. So you see, it's all speculations and assumptions. To businesses, well, they go like, there is no chance for me to actually, in the sense of There is no guarantee or proof that my clients actually have crypto or actually want to. So this is one of the payment gateways would end up being a really high volume in a
And it's actually even higher than an actual
Yeah,
store,
it is,
right?
because
debit card transactions are typically
Correct.
lower cost.
Yes.
Or they would accept cash.
Yes, and it's a high risk. I mean, there is a high chance you're selling a very expensive product. What happens when the client actually finds a chargeback, and then you will end up dealing with much more insane fees. So at the end of the day, I mean, to them, crypto is quite appealing. But here is the problem. Their clients don't actually use crypto. I mean, in most cases, if they use crypto, there is a high chance the price might go up or down, and then they will end up, they have to deal with much more crazy stuff. So it was very important in this case, for example, for the high risk merchants. We know the chargebacks is a problem. We know the high fees are a problem. And then we started thinking, how do we avoid using the credit card and MasterCard option as an option for payments? At the same time, tapping into a market that really is, that makes sense as a business decision to tap into or whatever it is. So that was just as an example of one of the results of the customer segments we've talked to. And so the end result boiled down to, as Yazan explained, master plan, bank-to-bank transfers. So after much thought and and hundreds of prospects we talked to, there's not a single dimension or a single segment, merchant segments. We actually tapped into several. We divided, categorized them, and then we try to hit them all in parallel to talk to as many as we can, just to get a sort feedback that we can actually utilize. So now it's concluded to the alpha. And the alpha is, it's more like, if you think of it in the parallel world, it's more like the credit and Visa card network. So that's the network for the base for the payment systems that we, whatever you develop. And it would make much sense because if you incorporate the reputation, as is explained in the master plan too, if you incorporate the reputation, it's you will have more control over the base layer. And in that sense, you can reputation as you progress.
Also, and I think like a super cool part about this is that even the verified payments alpha itself is something that we can actually find a market for. In fact, several markets. And there's so many exciting possibilities here even. And so some of them are like you can consider marketplaces, where you have a buy side and a seller side, and you need to make sure that you facilitate transactions. So most people would use credit card transactions for getting money from a lot of people into like a single account. What we can then do is, leverage the strength of verified payments to allow, businesses to send payments from a single bank account to potentially thousands of sellers. So this way, we're able to create value for all of these marketplaces that need a solution like this, where none exists today. You can't use credit cards for those.
Exactly.
Other examples, I mean, there are things like jewelry. There's also education. High value transactions. So exchange, even solutions are potential areas where we can partner with existing people that have this huge problem. So very, very promising, early feedback we got from verified payments. I want to talk about hiring, which is, something we get a lot of questions about.
Just before you go into hiring, one final thing I needed to say about the alpha is that the customer development phase is not a phase that simply ends by us getting the alpha version out. It's we're still involved with in the customer development phase, so it's really important for us to keep incorporating the feedback into the design phase of the verified payments.
It is an ongoing process.
Yes.
It's something we continue to do all the time and in every step of the
exactly. And there was a question actually in Reddit who developed the alpha. So the alpha is one of the core solutions of Verify. So it was very important.
Yeah.
We developed the alpha on our own, and
yeah, we built the early version of the alpha, and we're also going to be. And so coming to hiring, this actually takes us nicely to hiring. Is we actually just sent out an offer for our senior developer position, and we're still doing so that went out just yesterday, and we're also in the position of interviewing for several other positions, which we're still talking to a bunch of candidates. Interns a couple of weeks ago, and we actually had the opportunity to talk to a lot of Stanford students, and we're going to be sourcing a good number. I think we're looking at about 8 or 9 interns to help us out with the next joining Verify over the course of the next few months, and so that's going to be like a unique source of talent for us, for future full-time positions. So we're super excited about that.
We've actually met some of the community members in Stanford when we went there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the names are, but
there were a bunch of them. It was great to people. They also met a few at STEP conference in Dubai. I'll talk a little bit about that later.
I think we could talk now about the exchanges.
Yeah, let's jump into exchanges.
So the exchanges, one of the reasons why we hit San Francisco, Stanford, is aside from hiring, we also went there to attend. Specifically, there was this conference taking place about exchanges. So we thought it was a really good opportunity for us to actually get in contact with exchanges, because for some reason, it's super hard getting through to them. I mean, you can, get phone numbers, word of mouth, get people talk to you, recommend you to whomever is like a decision maker at exchanges. For some reason, I'm not sure why, but it's, apologies for the term, it's bloody hard to get through them. But at any case, it's a non-stopping process. We are constantly pursuing exchanges, and whatever opportunity that presents itself that we think we'll get a good listing from, we definitely on the last, unfortunately, that's why we didn't mention anything about us to binge.
We're still live. I can't. It should be. It says video and audio gone. Oh man. Hello? Can anyone hear? Dropped for the last 30 seconds. It's back now. Oh man. So it looks like we lost the last 30 seconds of audio. And so let's just make sure, can everybody hear us okay before we proceed, before we move forward with answering questions? Just let us know in the chat if you can still hear us before we proceed. Let's try that. All right, let's see if we have an internet connection. All right, looks like we're still on. Let me just confirm everybody can hear us fine. You really need to fix your internet. Yeah, it was working fine. Not sure what's going on. So just to confirm, can you hear us okay? Alan, Shai, Paul. Yeah, we can hear you now again. All right, let's go back in then. So that was exchanges, and the core idea there is that it's something we're still going to continue doing, right? Exchanges is still something we're pursuing, and yeah, we have just as that we're going to continue reaching out to the exchanges that we have on the post, but it's just very difficult to get a hold of the we documented the situation earlier. Anyway, that's something we're going to continue pursuing on the way, but we don't know how that'll look like in terms of timeline. With that, let's jump into questions. I know we have a bunch of them, some on Reddit, some on Telegram. So we can probably start with Reddit, see some of the questions there, and then we'll take a look at Telegram. So you want to pull out a few questions?
Yeah. So one of the questions about 1% of credit revenue to the company, how will it be treated? The 1% of each transaction that takes place on the reputation protocol.
So we're actually still, in the verified payments stage, we're still experimenting with various pricing models depending on which customer segment we're going after. And so, there are going to be variations in pricing. It's not fixed at 1%. For some customers, it would make sense. For some, it would not. And so once we've finalized what that pricing model is going to be like for the various customer segments, the second stage comes in where we talk about, in the master plan, I detail how we're going to start charging creds, 1% of creds, in the second stage of the master plan. So once we introduce the reputation protocol, and so yeah, that's when we're going to start instituting those fees, and that's when things are going to be a lot clearer as to what we're going to do, with those funds. Essentially, we'll be taking 1% of the dollar value of any transaction and then using that to purchase cred off of an exchange. And what happens with that cred, we'll detail at a later stage. But I think, my perception is that we'll probably end up locking it for a certain period of time.
Yeah. The other question is, so basically about the alpha and the users now, the private alpha testers. Any banks aside from Emirates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're actually talking to a couple of banks. So again, our policy is we'll try to reach out to the bank to set up some sort of partnership while simultaneously working on developing connections to those banks through their own APIs, their own internal APIs. And so, yeah, that's something we're continuing to do. Emirates NBD was our first sort of test for a proof of concept. We're also looking at NBAD and Meshreq to name a couple.
Yeah, and is there any chance to disclose the number of alpha testers and who they are?
Well, it's still ongoing. I don't think it would make sense. I guess the idea there is that they're trying to get some sort of impression for, activity in the alpha testing stage. I think what matters more is the kind of feedback that we get from these testers. And we can't disclose names just yet. I don't think it would be right. But we are actively testing with them, and we're testing across market segments, as Ibrahim mentioned earlier. There's jewelry, high value transactions like education, for instance, so paying the semester fees at universities, and various other segments that we're looking at. So not disclosing any names yet, but we'll be posting updates on alpha testing as things progress.
And what will be the first features for reputation protocol that will be incorporated into Verify, and when will it happen? Basically, when will the reputation protocol take place?
If we can set a timeline for that, I mean, it's going to be pretty far down the line. We're looking at, so verified payments is our focus for the next 12 or so months. And so reputation protocol may happen before we're done with verified payments. And so there may be some overlap, but I think it's safe to say that we're not going to be working on the reputation protocol for at least the next 6 months or so. We need to, like all of this is detailed in the master plan. We need to have high volume of transactions before we can focus on actually building reputation side. We will be collecting data around those transactions that take place so that we can backfill those into the reputation protocol. And so post facto, after the transactions have been completed. So we're sort of setting the stage for the reputation protocol, but we can't actually tell you right now when that reputation protocol is going to be released.
Okay, so there's also
there's one here that says, can you discuss Binance and Bittrex listing costs? I think they have. So Binance is very mysterious about how the listing process works. It's not very clear. And so we haven't actually got to the point where we discuss costs with them. Bittrex, I don't know, same thing. Like we actually applied for the Bittrex listing a while ago. I'd have to check the exchange listing posts, but
yeah, it's. So I'm trying to manage the questions here since there is some questions going on Telegram, and it seems that Mr. Scratch is what's he saying? How come? How are you using the alpha if there is only one bank and you're talking about other banks 12 months or so without a blockchain incorporation? The payments are off chain, no blockchain. You need to listen better.
What's the question?
The question is, how are you using the alpha with just one bank?
How are we using the alpha? So the alpha is just there as a demo for early customers to see that there is a proof of concept and that this thing actually works. And then for actually running transactions, we would integrate, whatever other banks. So our current approach is we look at the largest retail banks in the UAE, and because that would naturally, tell you the largest number of customers. So we could, based on our initial assessment, we would integrate with, integrating with the top 5 banks will give us over 80% coverage of the market. And integrating with 12 banks would give us over 90% coverage. And so that's going to be something that we do over the course of the next couple months. And it actually doesn't take us too long to integrate with banks. It's the partnerships that take much longer. But thankfully, we don't actually have to hinge the entire business on a partnership, on closing some sort of partnership with a bank. So the alpha is ongoing, and we use the first bank as sort of like a proof of concept that we can show to customers with actual money being transferred from actual bank accounts.
Yeah. The other questions remain basically about what can you exchanges.
Yeah.
So, okay, there is this question about what can you do.
So what do we have on? Let's continue with Reddit. Try and hit like the major ones, and just open up Reddit. See what we have. Wow, there are a lot of questions. Okay, so we can just pick like one from each post. Just pick one and see what happens.
We've already tackled most of the time, so
yeah.
Masternode staking token burn, is it a possibility?
Yeah, that's something again we'll discuss once the reputation protocol is in effect, because that's when we start instituting cred buys off the open market. So yeah, we'll consider some of those things. Maybe a token burn. I think that might actually make sense in some cases.
Has the quick bank-to-bank transfer speed helped up in actual usage?
Yep. So again, this is related to verified payments, and for the demo that we did, I think it took around 20-ish seconds to initiate a transfer, and that transfer was in bank. Essentially, that transfer was across Emirates and BT. The cool part is that there's actually no limiting factor on how long it will take once we've done in-bank transfers. So it would take the same amount of time to do a transfer in-bank and across banks. The only difference there being that I don't want to go into too many technical details about how this works, but essentially we would manage accounts at various banks, and we'd be able to settle transactions between those banks.
Mm-hmm. And
at the same speed, so it's the same transaction speed across banks, because effectively they're in-bank transfers.
And also, what about international adoption? Like, how is the plan looking to go beyond UAE?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said earlier, we talked about how reaching the top 12 banks will give us about 90% coverage of the market, and I think that would be sufficient to have a very good idea of how it will provide a very strong use case for customers in the UAE. And at that point, we'll look at potentially going cross-border, because really there's no limitation. There's no fundamental limit that prevents us from operating this sort of service cross-border. So between, say, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, or the UAE and Kuwait, or whatever, we do plan to span the entire region and provide this sort of real-time value transfer service at low cost across the entire region, which does not exist today.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, at least in the vision.
Like, people don't, I mean, I get weird questions about this, and I don't think this concept is clear to a lot of people. I mean, there's talk about pass-through payments and ACH and all these things. All of these solutions are region-specific. Like, you would have something that works in ACH in the US, and in Europe you have SEPA. There are various options, but they exist within a particular country, or in the case of Europe, the region. But no such solution exists in the Middle East, which is a booming e-commerce market. Yeah. And so there's a huge opportunity here. The next best option is next business day.
Yeah, and as Yazin mentioned, money is settled in a matter of days. It's not a matter of hours, though. But again, it's very important. I think it's really important to mention that we're trying our best to keep things under manageable scope. You don't want you don't want to keep to unleash everything at a time where you really can't. Just taking a simple example is supporting whoever you're testing the product with. You have to have a manageable
expectations. Yeah. Like, we need to be super focused on what we're working on at the moment. We can't promise the world, because it'll be incredibly hard to deliver. And so yeah, we do need to manage expectations and make sure that it's very clear that these are the priorities. Verified payments is our current priority, and that's what we're focusing on.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have?
Mostly about if you can just tell them a little bit more of when it's expected for the next hire to join the team.
Yeah, so we send out the offer. I think it'll be probably a couple of weeks before before he joins, and we'll be sharing details, once that happens. But yeah, we're still doing interviews, so this process is still ongoing, and this is going to take a lot of the load off me and Ibrahim, because like I said early on, the early version of the alpha was entirely built in-house, and so this is going to be our first senior development full-time role, and so that's going to make life a lot easier for us to be able to focus on the other sort of business side of things around customer development, making sure that we're pursuing the right objectives.
Yeah, and it wasn't some questions were saying or asking why is this taking longer? Simply put, you'll have to keep in mind that.
Why is what? Like hiring?
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep in mind that we had to have a clear vision on what we need to implement. I mean, we could have hired an employee early on, but what would he be doing? I mean, just sitting around, or so basically, in terms of developers, it was important for us to actually know the path we're going down through. So that's why, and also we gave it time for, you can't expect to post an announcement and hire the one next day. You need to view them, review them, and see their code, see how they're doing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really we're pretty picky about who we work with, and it took us a while to get to the point where like we're really clear on, you know, we need someone with a varying set of skills. We're not going to be able to just pull anyone, especially for a small company. You need to make sure that whoever you get is not ultra specialist in one particular field, but is more of a generalist. And so that's why it took us a while to make sure, just to make sure that we got the right person. And yeah, interviewing takes a ton of time, and it's something we continue to do.
And there's also another question, and again, it's worth reminding, it's not a single position, it's various positions we are trying to hire for. There's another question on marketing. What are you guys planning to do for marketing?
What are we doing for marketing? So, like marketing in general, the general definition of marketing is, you're trying to send a message across to your customers. I think the definition of marketing needs clarifying. So more traditionally, marketing, there's some sort of a customer acquisition cost, and so this could be a cost per click or cost per impression, and you compare that to the lifetime value of a customer, and then you're able to make a decision as to whether this marketing effort is worthwhile or not. Marketing in this context seems to be marketing directed at other people, like the community. And so the idea there seems to be like you would actually reach out to other people, try and get them on board with the concept of verifying. And I think for our approach, like our focus is 100% on building a product that works, building something that people actually want. And part of that will be marketing. So we do make announcements, we do share updates on how progress is going on, how the product is coming along, hires that we make on the team. But ultimately, like we need to make sure that we get the word across, and that's what we need your help with as a community. So just get the word across, and that would bring interest from outside people and people not currently in the community. Now, at the end of the day, like marketing is marketing in the more traditional sense, where we reach out to customers, is something we're already doing as part of this alpha testing. Right?
Correct, yeah.
We're talking to customers, getting their concerns, trying to understand, what sort of problems that they face and how we can address it with our solution. And the other marketing, which is, press releases and sending out, making like partnership announcements and all those things are not something we're focused on, and not something we'll likely be focused on for the next, few months. Focus is 100% on the product and building something that people need.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to emphasize on it's the alpha, later the beta, and the alpha is very important to really understand how to cater the proper solution to the proper needs. So it's very important to keep in mind that the alpha is not the final product. It's a product being expanded and enhanced, and of course, it's always changing and iterating to fit, so basically to find the business fit. Yeah.
So there's questions around like cred value and whether it will rise. I can't tell the future. I do know that we will be incorporating cred so even before the reputation protocol is released, we actually say it's going to be incorporated in the reputation protocol, but we would have to test it beforehand.
Yeah.
And like I said, like the whole point is that this current phase, we're focused on testing pricing. So we still haven't finalized pricing. 1% does not make sense in some cases and to some customer segments. And so we need to experiment with pricing to make sure we get something that works. Once we have a clear pricing model, then we're able to affect, this sort of impact on cred and how we're able to use a portion of every transaction in order to purchase cred off the market. And so, so yeah, that'll not happen immediately, but it is in the plan.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that we think this is a very important phase for us, because we're basically trying to replace what we call the Visa credit card networks. So we're not building on top of them. So we're trying to create a layer that renders everything else visible. So if this layer is executed right, so we expect everything just to fall in place.
Okay, what else we got?
So I think other questions about the KuCoin post. I mean, I think if I understood this correctly, why not upload all emails that went back and forth?
Oh, with KuCoin?
Yeah.
We just don't want to focus on KuCoin at the moment. I think that's over. We're not going to be listing on KuCoin. Is the live update still there? All right, what do we have?
Value.
End of year predictions. Token burn when reputation protocol goes live end of 20. And do we have some actual questions?
Like if you can just give more details about the experiences of new employees.
Hey, there's actually some questions about like Utrust and Manetha. I don't think people are getting the point. Like Utrust and Manetha are building sort of like a crypto checkout solution. Which again, like when you come back to the core question that we asked ourselves early on, is it how big is the crypto commerce market and whether it makes sense to make a solution catered to the crypto commerce market? It just does not make sense at this point. I really don't understand how building a crypto commerce solution, which is something you could do relatively quickly, and competing in a space where BitPay and Coinbase and all these other big players are coming into. All competing over a market that is super tiny. That, to me, makes no strategic sense. What else we got? All right, any plans for listing on an exchange other than IDEX? Exchanges, again, like we're working on exchanges and we're continuing to update the post. I mean, it takes a really long while to get any sort of response from exchanges, but we have found like promising responses from a few of the smaller ones. So not like the OKX or Buybox, but some of the smaller ones have actually reached out and we're talking to them. So we may not be able to hit a super large exchange immediately or in the near future, but again, like our focus is on just sort of making the gradual change.
I still can't get what the real cause was for not getting listed.
For not getting listed?
Yeah.
Well, we wrote a whole post about it. I don't know what the explanation is. I think just generally the power dynamic there it makes no sense. There was this article, I think it was on Business Insider, where they sort of talk about exchanges and how they're charging ridiculous fees for listings. And yeah, I think like the current way that the whole ecosystem is set up, exchanges have a disproportionate amount of power, and they get to decide like which coins get listed when and how. And so yeah, I just don't think like maybe if we take their crap, and we'll probably get listed eventually. Just pay them enough money, do the market making or whatever. But honestly, like I don't know if that's worthwhile. I mean, at the end of the day, like if you make a commitment, we actually got to the point where we signed, we paid. Things are final at that point. You can't change terms after a payment's been made. None of that makes any sense.
All right, so any other question we did not tackle that needs answering, please write it up in the comments.
What do we got? Anything else?
I'm checking the Telegram group as well.
Any unexpected issues or roadblocks besides this unfortunate KuCoin incident? That was asked by Mark213. No, I mean things are going according to plan now. We're in the alpha stage. We're testing with customers. We have various market segments that we're looking at, and yeah, I'm not like it's actually super exciting how where the entire like the broad spectrum of areas where we can actually leverage a solution like verified payments could make a huge difference to the market. And so that's been super exciting. The sort of feedback that you get back from potential customers that see the solution in action is just yeah, it's exciting.
So Thomas is asking if there's any new information.
That one.
Do you have any specific, like in terms of hiring? We mentioned that we already decided on a senior developer. We'll be publishing more information on that soon.
Interns wise, I think we've signed 4 out of the 8 or 9 that we're bringing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean things are moving on the hiring front, and we will have soon enough, very soon, we'll have a lot more hands on deck. So we'll be able to focus more broadly on making sure that we have a working beta in the hands of all of these customers. So we're able to do like customer development in parallel across various segments.
So the plan is to move to beta after. Any other questions?
All right, we got like 10 minutes left. Anything more on Reddit? Wait, I think there's some questions here.
Check the YouTube chat, maybe.
Binance, Bittrex. Try refreshing the page. All right, hiring, IDEX as an exchange, 1% credit fee. So I think on the point of the 1% credit fee, one thing I need to clarify is that people are not actually going to be, like, you have the option as a seller to purchase cred, and then your cred balance would be deducted. But you don't actually have to go and purchase cred. If you don't have creds, we will automatically deduct 1% of the USD value of this transaction, and then we would purchase cred through the exchange on your behalf in order to make the transactions work. What is it? All right, so Mr. Scratch. Credit fee is taken in dollars and then bought off from exchanges, nothing to do with blockchain. Okay, so yeah, it will actually happen off-chain. In the verified payments stage, the verified payments phase, the first one, creds are purchased offline, off-chain. 21 seconds is in banks. I don't know how they can say that it will take the same amount of time between banks, and what about scaling that? And so it actually is possible. Like I said, the way that things operate, we actually operate multiple bank accounts. I don't want to go into too much detail about how this works because there is something we don't want to disclose publicly yet, which is how things operate under the covers. But generally speaking, we operate multiple bank accounts across these various banks. And so we're able to affect immediate or near immediate transactions between banks using the same method. And so the demo that we did, that we shared earlier, was from an account, a customer's account, to our account. And then we would initiate a single transfer across all of these accounts to a destination account for the full value of the transaction. And so that's how we're able to affect. So if you think about it this way, like there are various potential, again, this implementation actually varies depending on which customer segment we're going after. So if the case is, for example, high value transactions, for instance, and we decide that, a customer decides that they want to buy, I don't know, a gold ring for like 20,000 dirhams. And so what happens is we initiate a transfer. The customer logs in with their online banking credentials. We initiate a transfer on behalf of the customer from their account to our account. And then we simultaneously effect a transfer from our account to a destination account, which is the merchant's account. that's how we're able to achieve the 21-second or approximately 21 seconds transfer time.
And you can visualize the whole process, some sort of mesh of accounts. So at the end of the day, there is a path between source and destination. So if you try to visualize it as a mesh of different accounts connected together, so you will ultimately hit the same. So basically, the in-bank.
The cool part is like we can actually do. So right now we're doing verification steps before we initiate the transfer. We can actually do this quicker, so quicker than 21 seconds. So Emirates NBD actually take longer because there are 3 verification steps that you need to do before a transaction is initiated.
Yeah. But yeah, you would ultimately achieve the end result using the same method. And we actually worked on that, so we're not worried on that end, to be honest.
All right, so we have Omar asking, market in the UAE. So credit card penetration is currently very low in the Middle East. How enthusiastic will the 12 largest banks be with verified payments? So, I mean, that's the cool part. Like, the people that have credit cards are a subset of the total number of people that have bank accounts. And so in many cases with these banks, you actually have to have a bank account before you can be issued a credit card. I mean, you need to settle your credit card bill somehow with payments coming from somewhere. In the vast majority of cases, those are happening by bank accounts. So bank account penetration in the region is actually much higher than credit card penetration in the same region. And so we actually have a larger addressable market for verified payments. Banks, they don't have a say in which banks we can integrate with or not, because essentially the passage we're taking and integrating with banks is the same passage that their own mobile banking apps use. So it's not a passage that they can stop. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. Let's see if we can squeeze in a few more questions. Is there anything on Telegram?
Trade secrets made. You want them to give it away? No questions. Yeah, so basically, it's really important to understand that the underlying. Basically, if we say out loud what exactly are we doing to suffice whatever we're saying, you're basically giving away whatever you're trying to achieve before others have even thought about doing it. So, and it's the first in the region, to be honest. Yeah, scaling. We've talked about scaling in the sense that if we start in the region with a specific. Yeah, what's about? Yes, I mean
like
scaling the solution. Yeah, scaling the solution internationally.
Yeah, we talked about that. I mean, there's really no fundamental limitation on setting this up in, say, between the UAE and Saudi Arabia or the UAE and Kuwait. And so it's really just a matter of integrating with the banks that we require to integrate with, so the destination bank accounts, and then we can effect the same real-time settlement.
If it's a mesh of accounts, what about scaling? How will you achieve this on a large scale? So we're not. It's very important we're scaling gradually. It's not about hitting all at once. So we're starting a specific region, a specific country, expanding to a region, and then expanding internationally. So things will happen gradually. It's not going to happen all at once.
I think we actually, I don't want to go into too much detail about how things work under the cover, but I will say that this is actually a proven model, and there are other. So it hasn't been used. Curiously enough, it hasn't been used in real-time bank transfers before, but this model is actually proven to work.
Especially in the region, it's very important to note that it's nothing. There isn't any similar solution in the region.
All right. So for those of us that missed the STEP conference, could you tell us a little bit about the event you said in your speech? So that was actually a pretty interesting STEP conference. I was originally set to talk, but they changed the agenda last minute, and I don't even think they updated the website. But I was put on a panel among a couple of other people, so representatives from Ripple, MasterCard, and Rankbank, one of the larger banks in the UAE. And we talked about a bunch of stuff, including blockchain potentially disrupting banks. And I think what was really interesting is I met I met a couple of people there at the event from various banking institutions, and they're all talking about blockchain. I mean, you don't see like actual implementation. I mean, you see like people whose job it is, to think about blockchain and how it can be applied, to their own banks, but you don't actually see a lot of stuff on the ground. And I don't know, like part of me thinks, okay, maybe, I don't know if they're actually taking this seriously, or if it's really just there to prevent, I don't know, just to make, sort of just show that, you're future and forward looking, and that, you want to implement this at some point in the future without having some sort of clear plan. But yeah, it was the general topic of the discussion was how we can transition from, like, it's easy to envision a future where blockchain, everything sort of happens on blockchain, right? Peer-to-peer payments for everything. But the problem is like how you bring that future into the present. In the present, you have banking institutions intermediating every single financial transaction that takes place. The vast majority of them, digital transactions, are intermediated by at least one financial institution. So how do you reconcile this reality where you basically have a bank as the custodian of all of your funds with a future where everything is done on the blockchain? I think that's a big part of where verified payments will be able to play a role in bridging, this present, this fiat full present, with a future that is entirely blockchain based. Okay, what other questions? I think there was a question about advisors. Yeah, I'd like to know how the advisors assist and what sort of advisors we're bringing on board. So we're actually in the process of putting together an advisory board, so like an official board of advisors, and this will include various. Like I'm actually super excited about this because had we in the beginning taken all of our advisors and put them on the board, they might not have been as relevant. We had a lot of people with deep expertise and reputation, and reputation is something that we're going to do in the second stage. What we need more immediate advice on is things that are more region specific, and we've actually got some amazing advisors that we're currently talking to, and we hope to be announcing in the next while, in this coming quarter, an advisory board made up of some people with amazing backgrounds in the fintech space in the region that are going to be super helpful.
Especially that we're focused on the region at the moment, so it would make sense to get region-specific experts.
There are some prominent names, people I hugely respect in the region, and I'm thrilled, that we've been we've been making waves in the region, and so the word has gotten across, and it hasn't been very difficult to get to some super high quality advisors to help us out, on this mission.
Yeah, there's one final question that maybe we can tackle.
Yeah, it's just about 2 p.m. Let's do one
last question. So they're asking, why should you hodl? In simplest terms, why should you hold cred? I'm used to the term hodl for some reason.
Why should you be holding cred? Well, I think from a utility perspective, like again, our goal is to get to the point where cred has utility, and that's something we're looking to do as soon as possible. So when we have a point where we've got a large transaction volume and we're able to make sense of that, we're able to create a reliable repetition product, then that's the point when we're going to introduce cred and provide protection for all of these transactions. Today, cred is purely speculative, like every other coin out there, and so why you buy or sell a certain coin is entirely up to you. But I think like one part that's super huge for us is just the fact that we're able to focus long term on creating a product that really works is our 100% focus. We could just as easily you trust Manitha, just launch a crypto payment solution and wait for customers to come, and they probably never will. Or we could and all the while, like, we could announce partnerships and hope that people will look at it and think, oh, this is a project with great potential. But our focus rather is on making sure that we actually build something that people will use, and that's like that's our focus. I think by focusing on the products, by focusing on customer adoption, we're going to be able to bring long-term value to anything that we create.
And we really believe that in the long run, that's why we want to get in the first place, because in the long run, you're actually creating demand for the credit, especially for the 1%.
And I don't know. It looks like we're not. I mean, I haven't been seeing a lot of GIFs in the group lately. I don't know what's going on, but maybe we could have. All right, I see Alan. Posting some GIFs. All right, maybe we could get more GIFs going on in the Telegram group. That'd be nice. I think one last question is, whether we can actually spend more time talking to the community, and I think that's something we need to make more official. So we should probably set up some sort of time each week or every couple of weeks where we sort of come in and address any open questions that you guys have. And so that's something we'll look to do, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you, guys. It was really good to see your face, to hear your report, to see your typings.
They saw our faces. Yeah. No, it was great to run this live stream and all these great questions that you guys have posed. We'll keep in touch. Like we'll make sure to check in every at least couple weeks into the Telegram group, and we'll try and set this up on a more frequent basis. We'll see what makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think this is definitely helpful. Just for us to understand what sort of concerns you guys have, and just address any open questions.
Yeah. And thank you guys, and we'll keep doing our best to give you the good news.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Cheers.